waiting for you.
Don't open apartment 407. Those were the first words Sarah Williams heard on her first day as a cleaner. The elderly maintenance supervisor wasn't joking. He didn't smile. He didn't explain. He simply placed a heavy ring of keys into her hand, pointed toward the 4th floor, and repeated himself. "Whatever you do, don't open apartment 407. Sarah frowned. Why? Is someone living there? The old man's eyes lingered on her for a moment before he quietly answered. It has been empty for 11 years. He turned and walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the lobby with more questions than answers. Apartment 407, empty for 11 years. Yet everyone seemed terrified of it. Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy suspense stories with shocking twists, subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the story. Sarah Williams never imagined she'd be pushing a cleaning cart through luxury hallways. At 32, she had once owned a small interior design business. But after the recession destroyed everything she'd built, she lost her clients, her apartment, and eventually her career. This cleaning job wasn't her dream. It was her last chance. Ashcroft Residences was one of the oldest and most prestigious apartment buildings in the city. Wealthy lawyers, surgeons, celebrities, and business owners lived behind its polished doors. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But Sarah quickly noticed something the residents never seemed to see. The employees were nervous, especially whenever anyone mentioned the 4th floor. By noon, Sarah finally understood why, unlike every other hallway in the building. The 4th floor was unnaturally silent. No conversations, no televisions, no footsteps, only a long corridor lined with polished apartment doors. 401, 402, 403, 404, 405, 406. Then, apartment 407. Sarah stopped walking. The door looked different from every other apartment. It was made of dark mahogany with an old brass handle. Dust covered the frame as though it hadn't been opened in years. Yet the handle itself gleamed, almost polished, as if someone touched it every single day. A chill crawled down Sarah's spine. Why would anyone polish the handle of an abandoned apartment? Before she could think any longer, another cleaner hurried toward her. "Don't stand there." Turned, the woman looked to be in her 50s with tired eyes and a housekeeping uniform identical to Sarah's. Her name tag read Linda. Sarah forced a smile. "I was just looking." Linda lowered her voice. Looking leads to questions. "What happened in there?" Linda glanced nervously toward apartment 407 before answering. "I've worked here for 12 years. And I've never seen that door open." Sarah laughed uneasily. "Seriously?" Linda didn't laugh. Instead, she pushed her cleaning cart away as fast as she could. Sarah watched her disappear around the corner. Something wasn't right. The rest of the afternoon, she couldn't stop thinking about apartment 407. Around 5 o'clock, she returned to the 4th floor to collect a bottle of glass cleaner she'd accidentally left behind. The hallway was empty, completely silent. She bent down to pick it up. Then she heard it tap. Sarah froze. The sound had come from inside apartment 407. She slowly looked at the door. Nothing. Maybe it was old plumbing. Maybe the building was settling. She shook her head and turned to leave. Tap. This time it was louder, 3 slow knocks coming from inside the apartment. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. She stepped closer. "Hello." No answer. She leaned toward the door and pressed her ear against the wood for a moment. Nothing. Then she heard it, a tiny voice, so faint she almost thought she'd imagined it. "Help." Sarah stumbled backward. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The apartment was supposed to be empty. She looked up and down the hallway. No one. Her trembling hand slowly reached toward the brass doorknob just before her fingers touched it. "What are you doing?" Sarah screamed and spun around. Standing several feet away was the building. Donovan, tall, impeccably dressed, expressionless. I thought I heard someone." "Didn't." "I'm sure I heard." "You didn't." His cold voice stopped her mid-sentence. He walked toward apartment 407 until he stood directly between Sarah and the door. "Never come to this floor after your shift ends." "I'm sorry. I'm serious." His eyes locked onto hers. "If you value your job," he paused, "and your safety, forget this apartment exists." Another word, he walked away. Sarah remained standing in the empty hallway. Her hands were shaking, because before Mr. Donovan had interrupted her, she knew exactly what she had heard. Someone inside apartment 407 whispered for help. Sarah barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the same desperate whisper. Help! By sunrise, she had convinced herself there had to be a logical explanation. Old buildings creaked, pipes made strange noises, people imagined things when they were exhausted. Still. She arrived at Ashcroft Residences 30 minutes before her shift. Not because she wanted to clean, because she wanted answers. The lobby was alive with its usual elegance. Residents crossed the marble floor carrying leather briefcases. A pianist played softly near the reception desk. Fresh lilies filled the air with their sweet fragrance. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Sarah spotted Linda restocking a housekeeping cart. She walked over casually. Can I ask you something? Linda didn't even look up. If it's about apartment 407, I don't know anything. Sarah frowned. You knew exactly what I was going to ask. Linda sighed. Everyone asks. Either stop asking. She finally looked Sarah in the eye, or they stop working here. Sarah stared at her. Did they quit? Linda never stayed long enough to find out. Sarah could ask another question. Linda pushed her cart away. Sarah watched her disappear. She wasn't hiding a secret. She was afraid of one. Around noon, Sarah received her next assignment, apartment 406. The apartment directly beside 407. An elderly woman greeted her warmly. Take your time, dear. Be at my doctor's appointment. As soon as the woman left, Sarah quietly walked toward the wall separating the two apartments. She stood still. Listening, nothing. She leaned closer, still nothing. Then a faint vibration, like something heavy sliding slowly across a wooden floor. Her pulse quickened. She knocked softly against the wall. Silence. Then knock. One single knock answered back. Sarah jumped so hard she nearly knocked over a dining chair. Someone answered her. She hurried out of apartment 406 with her heart racing. That evening, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Instead of going home, she searched the internet. Ashcroft Residences. Thousands of results appeared. Luxury apartments, historic architecture, 5-star reviews, nothing unusual. Then she typed something different. Apartment 407 Ashcroft Residences. Only one result appeared, an old newspaper article. The headline read, Local businessman disappears without a trace. Sarah clicked immediately. Most of the article had been deleted. Only a few lines remained. The missing businessman, Daniel Harper, had lived in apartment 407. She refreshed the page. Error, article unavailable. Someone had removed it. The next morning, Sarah visited the city library before work. An elderly librarian disappeared into the archives and returned carrying a dusty folder. There wasn't much left, she admitted. Several newspapers from that year mysteriously disappeared. Sarah's stomach tightened. She carefully turned the fragile pages. Then she found him, Daniel Harper, a smiling businessman in his late 50s, owner of Harper Construction, reported missing, never found. Police believed he had disappeared voluntarily. No evidence, no body, case closed. But one sentence made Sarah stop breathing. Several employees reported hearing strange noises coming from apartment 407 for days after Mr. Harper vanished. Sarah slowly lowered the newspaper. The apartment, the same sounds, the same mystery for 11 years. That afternoon, she returned to work carrying more questions than answers. As the elevator opened onto the 4th floor, something immediately felt different. Apartment 407. Slightly open. Only an inch, just enough to reveal darkness inside. Sarah looked both ways. The hallway was empty. She knew she should report it instead. Curiosity won. She gently pushed the door. It opened with a long, slow creak. Dust floated through thin beams of afternoon sunlight. The apartment looked frozen in time. A dining, old bookshelf, family photographs hanging neatly on the walls, everything exactly as it must have looked 11 years ago. She stepped inside. Then another step, silence, complete silence until she noticed something impossible. A coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter. Steam drifted slowly into the air, fresh. Someone had been there only moments earlier. Sarah's breathing became shallow. Hello. No answer. She slowly backed toward the front door. Then footsteps, not inside. Someone was walking down the hallway. Panic rushed through her body. She quickly hid behind a nearby doorway just as the apartment door opened wider. A tall man entered. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, black leather gloves, polished dress shoes. In one hand, he carried a small silver briefcase. Sarah couldn't see his face. He walked directly to the fireplace, without hesitation. He reached behind an old painting. A hidden panel slid open inside the wall. Sarah's eyes widened. A secret compartment. The man placed the briefcase inside, closed the panel, straightened the painting, then quietly walked back out. The apartment fell silent once again. Sarah waited until his footsteps disappeared completely. Only then did she step out from hiding. Apartment 407 wasn't abandoned. Someone had been using it all along, and whatever they were hiding had remained hidden for 11 years. Her eyes slowly drifted toward the painting above the fireplace. Her hand trembled. Should she open it or walk away? Before it was too late, Sarah stared at the old painting above the fireplace. Every instinct told her to leave. But curiosity had carried her this far. Slowly, she reached behind the frame. Her fingers searched the wall until click. A hidden panel slid open. She held her breath. Inside were dozens of thick brown envelopes, stacked neatly from floor to ceiling. Each one had a photograph clipped to the front. Sarah carefully pulled out the first envelope. The picture showed a smiling middle-aged couple standing outside Ashcroft residences. Across the photograph, someone had written in bold black marker, "Moved out, 2019." She opened another. A young family. The words, "Disappeared, 2020." Another. An elderly businesswoman. Transferred. Sarah's breathing grew heavier. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Every envelope contained private information, photographs, bank statements, medical records, employment history, insurance documents. Someone had secretly built a complete archive on the residents of Ashcroft residences. This wasn't an abandoned apartment. It was a surveillance room. A place where people's lives were quietly recorded. Her hands trembled as she reached for another envelope. This one had no photograph, only 3 words written across the front. Sarah Williams. Her blood ran cold. Slowly, she opened it. Inside was her driver's license, a copy of her employment application, her old apartment address, her previous business records, even the address of the nursing home where her mother lived. Someone knew everything about her, not just since she started working here, long before. Sarah felt the room begin to spin. She hadn't been investigating apartment 407. Apartment 407. Been investigating her. A sudden creak echoed behind her. She spun around. The apartment door was slowly swinging shut. No, she sprinted toward it. Bang, the heavy door slammed closed just before she reached it. Sarah grabbed the handle, locked. She pulled harder, nothing. She pounded against the wood. Help! Is anyone out there? Silence then. Heavy footsteps approached from the hallway. Relief flooded her face. Please! Locked in. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. A shadow appeared beneath it. Someone was standing there. Sarah waited for the lock to turn instead. A folded piece of paper slid underneath the door. The footsteps walked away. Sarah picked it up with shaking hands. Only one sentence was written across it. "You should have listened on your first day." Her heart nearly stopped. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had expected her to come inside. Someone had been waiting without warning. The lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the apartment. Sarah couldn't even see her own hands then. Somewhere deep inside the darkness, she heard it. Scrrrr. A slow metallic scraping sound, like something impossibly heavy being dragged across the wooden floor. Closer, then closer again. Sarah held her breath, every muscle in her body locked with fear. The scraping stopped. Silence. Then a whisper drifted through the darkness. "So, you finally opened it." The voice was only inches away. Sarah screamed and stumbled backward. There was no one there. Then a bright flashlight beam suddenly pierced the darkness. Standing across the room was the same man in the black suit, tall, perfectly still, his face hidden beneath the shadow of the light. He spoke calmly. "You've already seen too much." He took one slow step toward her, then another. Sarah backed against the wall. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head. "You ask too many questions." "What do you want from me?" A faint smile crossed his. "Should be asking you that." His eyes shifted toward the open compartment behind the fireplace. "You've touched things that don't belong to you." "Didn't take anything." "I know." His smile grew wider. "But now you know they exist." The apartment fell silent again. Then, without warning, he reached into his coat pocket. Sarah's heart pounded instead of a weapon. He removed an old black and white photograph. He handed it to her. "Look closely." Sarah stared at the faded picture. 5 construction workers stood proudly in front of Ashcroft residences. One face made her stomach drop. The man standing beside her, the same face, the same eyes, the same scar above his eyebrow. She looked at the date printed beneath the photograph, 1987. Her hands began shaking uncontrollably. She slowly looked back at him. You. That's impossible. The man smiled. So people always say. Sarah could ask another question. Bang, someone pounded on the apartment door. Bang, security. Open the door. Sarah's eyes widened. She turned toward the entrance. Hope returned for the first time. I'm in here. She ran toward the door behind her. Mysterious man didn't move. He simply watched. The lock suddenly clicked. The door swung open. 2 security officers rushed inside. Sarah pointed frantically behind her. He's there. She turned to look and froze. The man was gone. Sarah stood completely frozen. The apartment was empty. The flashlight gone. The hidden compartment closed. The mysterious man vanished. No, he was standing right there. The 2 security officers exchanged uneasy glances. One searched every room, the bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom, nothing. 5 minutes later, he returned. Nobody's here. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. He spoke to me. The older officer sighed. This apartment has been vacant for 11 years. Sarah shook her head. No, just saw someone. He lowered his voice. You're not the first employee who said that. Chill crept through Sarah's body. What happened to them? The officer hesitated. They all resigned. 4 words echoed inside her mind. Linda, the frightened cleaners, the warnings, none of them had been imagining things. As the officers escorted Sarah into the hallway, she noticed something strange. The younger security officer quietly bent near the apartment entrance for barely a second. He slipped a small brown envelope into his jacket pocket. It looked exactly like the envelopes hidden behind the fireplace. He looked up. Their eyes met. A slow smile spread across his face, not friendly, not reassuring, a warning. Then he calmly walked away. Sarah watched him disappear around the corner. Her heart pounded harder than ever. He hadn't searched apartment 407. He had collected something from it. That meant the security staff were part of whatever was happening inside this building. She slowly turned back toward the apartment. Apartment 407 stood silent then, without anyone touching it. The old mahogany door slowly swung shut. Click. The sound echoed through the empty hallway. Sarah couldn't move. For the first time, she understood the truth. She hadn't uncovered a mystery. She had stepped directly into it. And somewhere inside Ashcroft Residences, someone already knew exactly who she was. Someone was already watching her. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because Part 2 uncovers the terrifying secret hidden inside apartment 407. Trust me. After what Sarah discovers next, you'll never look at an apartment building the same way again. Now tell me in the comments. Do you think the mysterious man really is? Why hasn't he aged since 1987? And what was inside the envelope the security officer secretly took? Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and whatever you do, if you ever see apartment 407, don't open the door.